Well, welcome back to Ridge Talk. It's a pleasure today to have Aaron Santmyire with me. Aaron is one of the missionaries that we support. During the month of March, we've been talking about our local missions ministry partners, as well as some of our international missions ministry partners. And Aaron is somebody that we have supported for a very long time here at Southridge. And I've gotten to sit with him a couple times since he's been back in the U.S., once with his wife and once just over lunch with him. And both of those times have been really valuable to me. So I'm excited today to have you here, man,
Sure.
and to just dig in a little bit more to what your life looks like, what your ministry looks like. You were here and spoke a few months ago. I think you had kind of just gotten back to the U.S. at that time, and did a great job preaching a message here that morning. But then I thought, I'd love to hear more about what life and ministry look like. And then you are home on what they call furlough. We'll dig into what that looks like here in a few. But why don't you begin by just telling us, you serve on the continent of Africa, but it's kind of outside of just one country location, right?
For
So you want to give us an idea what that looks like?
Yeah, so I'm the East Africa Area Director, and there's 17 countries, and we have 14 teams in those countries, and we serve 13 national churches. So everything that we do within Africa with the mission is to see a healthy church within walking distance of every African. And we truly believe that the church, the local church, just like Southridge is a local church in this community making an impact, everything we do as missionaries is to see that church established. So we come alongside and we partner with churches, we encourage churches, we do our best to empower those local churches. And so it looks different in different places.
Sure.
Some places, I can't name the names of the countries, but some of the places we're at, there is no church. It's, it's 99% Muslim, more. So that looks like people living in communities, maybe working in what we call BAM, a business as mission. And, they're there to share the love of Jesus Christ in that way. We have other, missionaries that will be living in places that are in gateway cities in Africa. So we have a church, an urban church in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. We have one in Nairobi, Kenya. We have one in Antananarivo, Madagascar. One in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. We're getting ready to plant a new church in Kampala, Uganda. Right. And so those are reaching the urban influencers as they move forward. Sure. And then the last one is kind of our main way we partner with these churches is what we would consider traditional missions, which would be training teachers in Bible schools, not training pastors in Bible schools. So we teach in the Bible schools. Yeah. And that would be compassion, next gen, working with the youth and children. The population in Africa, the amount of those that will be in the next, that are under the age of 18 is unbelievable. Yeah. I don't want to be exaggerating, but I think it's 40-50%. It's a large part of the population. And so we're excited. So that's a little bit about what we do. It is a large, surface area on the map. But a beautiful, beautiful place, and a place that's been an honor to serve in.
Yeah, that's great. So you've got a lot of oversight over some probably veteran missionaries, but also people who are maybe hitting the field and are new.
Yeah.
That has to be a tremendous balance and challenge at times. I know we've talked in a couple of the conversations that we've had just about the challenges of helping people overcome kind of getting to a new place, realizing that you can have a whole lot of ideas about what you think missionary life is going to look like, and oftentimes the field just adds more challenges than you could have imagined, and kind of helping people navigate those. And I think you shared even just a couple ways that you are providing care for some of those missionaries who might have some adverse experiences and things like that. So, you're serving in a very pivotal way there. I want to dig in a little bit. I met your wife the first time we had lunch, and I learned that she is originally from Africa. So you have an interesting mix of, you come from the United States, you bring that culture with you, and then she is getting to live in her kind of native continent
Sure.
and bringing her experience there. And then you have a couple of children.
I do.
Well, are they not even really children anymore? A couple
No.
college students?
That's right. Isabel will be 21 and Josiah's 18.
Yeah. So, really your whole family has been invested in the work of ministry that you've been doing. Your kids, for them, it probably just felt like kind of growing up normally rather than on the mission field. But in a sense, like just the mix of their mom's culture and your culture. And from what I understand, they're now in the U.S.
They are.
Attending college.
They are.
And so what's an interesting thing about missionary culture is that oftentimes you find this where you and your wife have, planted yourself somewhere outside of the culture that you grew up in, and then you raise kids within that culture, and then they come back to a place like the U.S. to go to school or something, and they're actually engaging in a completely foreign culture to them, but it's familiar to you. How's that been kind of to navigate that a little bit with them?
I think I'm the only one in my family that's not a missionary kid or a third culture kid. So you highlighted Heather grew up on the mission field, both my kids, Isabel and Josiah. Often in the missionary community, they talk about third culture kids. So you take blue is kind of your passport country. American passports are blue. And then you take yellow, which is maybe where you're serving, and it makes green. Yeah. And it's that third culture where you understand that you're from a passport country, but at the same time, majority of your life experience has been in another place. And so you really don't fit in either place. And so my kids, and Heather would tell you, Heather grew up in Zimbabwe, but she was never Zimbabwean. My kids grew up in Madagascar. They were never Malagasy. They were Americans living there. Their friends were Malagasy. Their connections were there. But at the end of the day, they were never going to be Malagasy. So then they come back to the U.S., which technically they are Americans, but they miss cultural cues. They don't understand exactly how things work. They don't necessarily understand. If you saw them on the street, you'd say there's an American kid, but they don't know from ordering at restaurants, from just going to the bank. We're working with my son through some things at the bank now. He doesn't understand the process of how that works. He understands how it works in Madagascar, but not here. And in the beginning, when we took our kids to the field and I would hear people say that, I'd say, come on, they can figure it out. But being a parent and watching it, it is a true reality. And the kids develop that resilience. They are resilient, but at the same time, it is full of challenges. And both of my kids would say, if they were here today, where are you from? Both of my kids say West Virginia, which makes my dad's super proud. But they know that's an easy answer. Sure. But they don't want to say, actually, we grew up in Madagascar, because then that ends up to a whole deep thing. And then the other thing that both my kids would tell you is, and my wife would tell you, if you say I'm from Madagascar, it puts a wall up because people don't know how to relate to that. And so you lose friends very quickly, because if you say you're from West Virginia, they say, well, that's the United States. They can connect with that. But if you say, hey, I grew up in Madagascar, you're kind of segregated to the side. So once my kids and my wife, once they get to know people, they'll begin to share a little bit about their story, but it's not something they lead with just because it can create distance rather than what you want is relationships. Yeah.
And I bring that up because I think that's one of those insights into the life of people who choose to do missions that a lot of us don't ever even realize or get to see. I had the privilege of getting to know a couple third culture kids in my life, and it really did open my eyes to, my goodness, there's just so much that is taken for granted when you kind of grow up in a culture, and then, you get all those cues and all of those ways of operating. And so I look at that and I go, man, for an opportunity to just be in prayer for your family, thinking about, you guys are now going to be living, in a separate continent with your kids here, going to school. There's the empty nest thing, but on top of that, they're navigating a whole new culture and all of those things. So Southridge people, I would just encourage you. That is definitely one way to pray for their family, just as all these different transitions are taking place. and things like that, that God would just be with them in all of that. So
one thing, what we've tried to do with our kids, which I think all parents, is make sure our identity's in Christ.
Yeah.
We don't want them to think, well, I'm a missionary kid, different, and that's where my identity is in being a missionary kid. Our identity, we've tried, and my kids they say it ad nauseum. They get tired of us talking about identity, but we want them to say their identity is in Christ, because that's transformational, and that transports wherever you want to go. It's not necessary, but if we do we've just said, if you put your identity in being American or being a missionary kid, that's limiting. But the love of Christ, if we can find our identity in that and proclaim that and understand that, man, that'll get you through a lot of places.
Yeah, that's really vital. That's great. So tell me a little bit, we did talk about you oversee, how many countries was it again?
17 countries.
Okay, that's more than I had remembered. Okay. And so where, are you able to tell us where you guys reside?
Yeah. I live in Nairobi, Kenya. That's where our house is. But we serve countries from Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Somaliland, then into Ethiopia and Kenya, North Sudan, South Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, and then Madagascar, Mauritius, Seychelles, Rodrigue, and a few other islands in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah. So how often do you have to travel to those different places?
Depends. This year I think we're going to talk about it, we've been on furlough, so I have not. But what we have maximized is electronic communication. Yeah. So different, I serve leaders and serve people there, team members on the ground. And so we do stay and connect with them using technology to do that. Yeah. If we were back in Nairobi, in general, we try to make a visit, in context visit is what we would call it, at least once a year. Yeah. Just so we can see how people are doing, get to be with them face to face and experience a little bit of their life.
Yeah, so that's quite a bit of travel, even once a year, divided up amongst that many countries.
It is.
That's kind of a common theme for you is travel, even being here on furlough, right?
Yeah.
So, you're traveling when you're at home, in Nairobi, going to check in these various places. You have, are all your responsibilities when you are in Kenya just the administrative stuff over those teams, or is there also stuff that you're doing?
I work in a clinic. So, I work here in my sister's clinic, but there I work in a clinic in a certain part of town, reaching a certain people group. So I can't say it publicly, but a certain people group. And so I do derm there. And so that's what it looks like. I do a lot of administration, but at the same time, I love being around people. I love engaging, and I don't want to be separated from what it really means to plant the church. So that gives me an opportunity to engage, understand culture, to have Christ-centered conversations, and care for people. And so it's something that gives me great joy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it sounds like it keeps you pretty busy.
Yeah.
And then you are here on what they call furlough.
Yeah.
I think that has a different connotation than it does in some other typically that kind of means that you've been laid off in some businesses, but I think it's anything but for you, from what you've told me. So you want to give me a little bit of insight in what does furlough look like for you guys? What have you been up to?
I've always approached it. It's not, it's not time off, but I've always approached it as something I really enjoy. I really enjoy getting to come to churches like Southridge and visit and share. For one, to be grateful and thankful for churches that have supported us, that have prayed for us, that have, Southridge for many years when we were in Madagascar, every Christmas, took up an offering to help the kids there at the orphanage. And so just the opportunity to get back and to thank people that that are, allowing you or giving you the opportunity to live in a country, to share the love of Jesus Christ. But it does. It looks like a lot of traveling. You're traveling. You make a lot of phone calls, lunches, and meetings. Me, I'm also trying to get my license renewed so I can, my license in Africa is based on my license in the States. So I have to have a license there. It is a full-time thing. So it's not vacation, but I've never been one to complain about it. Sometimes people will say, well, but you're traveling, you get to seek, you get to share the love of Jesus Christ, you get to share God's word, you get to meet phenomenal people. You normally get to eat pretty good food. And, that's not a bad gig. You know what I mean? And so it's not restful. It's not, a vacation, But at the same time, my dad and I talk a good bit, and I'll say, Dad, I'm not digging ditches. You know, he said, man, you're really busy. You're doing a lot of stuff. I said, but Dad, I'm not digging ditches. You know, I said, I get to share the love of Christ, just as I shared. Get to share the love of Christ, meet great people. But yeah, it's. I have no complaints about it.
So you're working here locally in a dermatology clinic.
Yep.
You just came from there to come sit down with me. You're traveling most weekends to go to churches.
I would say 99%. Yeah.
Yeah. So going to the churches to kind of, thank them, be present with their people, while still performing a lot of your duties
100%.
Via Zoom or whatever with missionaries in Africa as well, right?
Yeah. So just this week, I mean, just the things that you would navigate in a church life. We've had one of our missionary colleagues pass away. We've had, so I continue to care for the missionaries that are on the ground, continue to engage with the leaders that are there. And, my role as an area director is 4 things. It's pastoral care. It's developing leaders. It's administrative oversight, and it's strategy and vision. And so those things can't take a year off. They don't, they just don't stop for a year. So it is creative. But I think that's one thing we learned from COVID. There's ways to do it. And I want to be wise steward of churches like Southridge that support us. I want to be wise steward of the funding. And so if I can do things on Zoom or do things electronically, that's free. Versus a bunch of travel, which can add up. But no, the duties don't stop. But I enjoy it. They're great people. The thing that God has been really laying on my heart and life over the last probably 4 or 5 weeks is that, just a few, I call them a few self-evident truths. One, that as missionaries we're called to establish the church amongst all peoples everywhere. To establish the church among all peoples everywhere, we get the opportunity to serve in diverse cultures. Regardless of our cultures, we're spiritual people on a spiritual mission, using spiritual methods to accomplish a spiritual goal. We're also in a spiritual war. And because we're in a spiritual war, we have an enemy, and that enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And I get the opportunity to care for missionaries as they're going through those spiritual realities. You talked about new missionaries coming out. That's one thing I didn't recognize, is when you engage in that to see the church established, you're stepping into a spiritual war, right? The enemy that's not what he wants. And so you engage and it becomes challenging. And because of that, we see missionaries that they'll struggle with common challenges, whether that's emotional health, physical health, families, maybe your kids. Dr. Dobson says is a lot of times a parent is only as happy as their unhappiest child. And so walking with families as they navigate that. And so we have the opportunity to care for them, but recognizing that it's uncanny. Just the amount of challenges missionaries will face. And, I'm not trying to hyper spiritualize or over spiritualize things. At the same time, recognizing it is a spiritual war that we're engaging in. And I didn't realize that. I should have realized that when I was 24 years old. I just thought I was kind of translating myself into another role. But there's I had a lot of maturing, a lot of growing up to do. Still, not that I've arrived. I still have maturing, still have growing up to do.
We'll ask your wife what she
says. Yeah, that's right. She'll tell you the truth. She'll give you the inside scoop. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I think, our enemies of the world, the flesh, and the devil, the more we tend to press into ministry in some capacity, the pull of the world or the weaknesses of our own flesh and then the spiritual resistance that we face definitely seem to come at a higher level when we do those things. So that's absolutely, some way that we can also, guys, pray for Aaron and his family and just the ministry that they're doing. The amount of care I'm sure that you're providing to other people is probably pretty high. And so then where does that energy come from? You have to have the energy to be able to pour into them. And so we can definitely be praying that Aaron and his wife would have just the capacity for that. So any other insights about furlough? So, how long you're here for a year?
Here for a year. Normally you're on the field for 4 years. You're home for a year. That's normally how it works. In that time, They give you your budget, you raise your budget and you go back. It was when you have kids, you try to time it on the school schedule.
Yeah.
So you want your kids to not be in and out of school schedule. Now that our kids are grown and gone, that's not such a tension point. But that's in general, how it works. We had not taken a furlough since 2015.
Oh, wow.
So it had been a long time that we had chose to try to come home and do as we moved into leadership, it was harder to take a whole year, be gone for a whole year. So we would take a month here, a month there, and come in the summer in the States. And I had the opportunity to speak at Southridge a few times during those. But this is the first time since 2015 we've been home for a whole year.
Yeah.
So it's been good. I've really enjoyed. It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Is there anything kind of new awaiting you once you guys get back in country? Do you have any new responsibilities or anything?
Yeah, so we are stepping into a role of directing member care for all of the organization. And so that's, we have 2,700 missionaries, 1,500 missionary kids. And so we're stepping into a role that will allow us to care for missionaries around the globe. And so what that looks like is we're working to help people in wellness. We want people to be proactively healthy. And so helping missionaries be on the ground, be healthy. I really believe a healthy missionary plants a healthy church.
Yeah.
An unhealthy missionary hurts people. And
Yeah.
you talked about character. When we get in a compressed situation and you're in a culture and our character, a lot of times, the God's anointing, God's blessing can be on our life. At the same time, if our character falters or breaks down, then there can be huge consequences for that. So we really do want missionaries to be proactively healthy. That looks like investing in marriages. That looks like investing in raising resilient children. I would love to tell you I was like this a parent that, in my later years, I began to think a lot about that. But how do we help parents navigate some of the challenges that kids will navigate when they move overseas? And so that's part of it. Emotional health or mental health. Yeah. Missionaries is a high rate of depression and anxiety. And a lot of times missionaries are lonely. We travel, you travel and speak, but one of the common things I see, themes in missionaries that I serve is loneliness. Yeah. And they're in a different culture. They don't necessarily know if they can have friends. Then maybe churches might partner with them, but then they don't necessarily feel like they can open up and share what's really going on in their life because they don't know how that'll be perceived. Yeah. But we're trying to make care, and when I first got into missions, care was directive and punitive. Mm-hmm. And what I really want to see care is to become normative and restorative. Yeah. And so that's a culture shift that I believe that we can get there. But that's where I'm excited about it. I love caring for people. I really do. It's a passion that God's given my heart. And I don't come at it from a way that I'm awesome and I'm going to teach you how to be awesome. I come from it that my many years in missions were challenging and tough. I was sick. I was down. I went through, those were challenging days. Yeah. And so I don't come at it a way that I'm awesome. I'm going to teach you to be awesome. I've struggled and went through a lot of challenges. And, I didn't have the courage to reach out for help. Sure. And, I didn't reach out for help in my younger years. And, I made it through it, but my desire is to see whether you're 75 and on the field and going through challenges or you're 25 and just getting to the field, how can I walk alongside, encourage you? I don't have all the answers. Yeah. But I am willing to walk alongside people and care for them and encourage them and partner with them as they move towards health.
I think it's pretty neat to think about the fact that you might have the opportunity to provide the type of care you yourself would have needed at some other point in your life, which is really cool.
And I don't, I'm not, sometimes we can look at the past and judge the past. Mm-hmm. So I don't judge my past leaders because they did. The reality is that we have new information today and new experience today. Yeah. And so I'm very thankful for my leaders in the past, but also recognizing we're in a different world today. Mm-hmm. And, but you're right. Gives me the opportunity to care for people, and not project what my experience is. Yeah. But as I said, it's a spiritual world. The enemy's common. Yeah. And so he uses common tactics. And you see missionaries, the attrition rate of missionaries in the first 4 years is about 50%. Yeah. So the majority of people in those first few years, is challenging. And one of my heart's desire is to decrease that attrition. Sure. So people can stay on the field and follow the call that God has on their life.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been kind of leading our people in during this month, we've had one other international missionary who came on a Sunday morning and shared about her time. I think she's actually part of your same organization.
Sure.
She was here. She serves in North Africa.
Okay.
And I asked her, what are some ways that Southridge can partner with you in prayer and then tangibly?
Sure.
And so, like we've been talking about, during the month of March, we've been asking our people to consider giving toward our missions fund, which goes to support local partners as well as partners like you. You guys can find more information about that. You can go to our website. There's a place to give there. And there's also a way, if you just give on a normal Sunday morning, you can mark missions on your giving and we make sure that it goes toward that fund. So that's kind of the tangible side of things. But can you just leave us off with a few ways that we can be praying for you guys as you finish? When do you finish up furlough?
Should be finished the end of May.
Yeah, I thought that was coming.
Yeah.
So as you're finishing furlough and making your way back home and kind of getting your bearings and getting started back up and taking on this new thing, what are just, maybe 2 or 3 specific prayer points that we can partner with you there?
Sure. I ask people to continually pray Psalms 32:8. Guide and direct me in the way I should go. Counsel me with your loving eyes upon me. I probably pray that prayer or quote that verse 10 to 15 times every day.
Yeah.
But when you think for the Santmyires, if you could pray that, that God will guide and direct me. I make the amount of decisions I make in a day, everything from arranging from where people are going to send their kids to school, whether they should stay on the field or come off the field, whether we're going to engage here, engage there, navigating. I just this week we're navigating. One of our team members passed away, so I make a lot of decisions in a compressed amount of time, and those decisions end up impacting a large amount of people. And because of that, I do really want God to guide and direct me, and I do want His counsel. So if people could pray that, that would be valuable. I think the other one, I think I shared when I was at Southridge in September, is pray Psalms 27:1 that we will continue to rest, and I'll be able to communicate to those that I serve that God is our light and our salvation, and that we shouldn't have to fear. That He's the stronghold of our lives. That I shouldn't have to be afraid, and the people that I serve shouldn't have to be afraid. But people are faced with deportation things. They're faced with threats, physical threats on their lives. They're faced with different challenges. We've had some people in the last 4 or 5 weeks come to Christ in places where that is very, very uncommon. And then the threats and the attacks that come on them. It's very easy to slip into fear, and it's very easy to slip into being afraid. And people would say, "Well, missionaries shouldn't be fearful; they shouldn't be afraid." But we're humans also. But pray that prayer, and then that would be those be 2 of them. And just pray that as we launch new teams, we're in the process of launching a new team in an island country. Pray for as we launch that new team, and then also for the new church plant in Kampala, Uganda. It's an exciting time, but it's also there's some challenges that go with it. So those kind of be the 3 that I can think of. And you brought up, and so I would ask to pray for our kids. Our kids are navigating adulting in the United States. Pray for their mom and dad, as we
everyone's name, your wife and your kids' names.
My wife is Heather, and my daughter Isabel, and then my son Josiah.
So we can pray for them by name. Yeah, man, this has been so good. I mean, I could sit and talk to you and ask you questions for hours, but I'm not sure everyone wants to slog it out on a podcast that long. But thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
For being here. You've been an encouragement to me in the couple times that we've sat together, and we will definitely be praying for you guys and trying to support you guys the best that we can. So
thank you very much. And thank you, Southridge. Thank you for all you've done to support us. First time I spoke at Southridge was, I think, in 2011. And so since 2011, this church has prayed for us, has partnered with us, and I'd be remiss to have this conversation today without thanking you all for your faithfulness and your kindness to our family, and allowing us and giving us the opportunity to pursue the call that God has on our life, to be able to see the church established among all peoples everywhere.
Yeah. Hey, one last thing. If people want to keep up with what you're doing, do you have a website or somewhere they can follow that?
Yes. We do have a website. It's startcaringtoday.com. Startcaringtoday.com. My wife also sends out newsletters. If you would want to, you could get on the website. You could put your email address in that, and she could send that to you electronically. Yep.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.